Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
My name is Gemma. I knew I shouldn't have gone to the wedding. My back ached from holding Lily all night. Her teething screams had split the silence until dawn, and my eyes were crusted over with exhaustion. But Tiller didn't care. "You're still going," he said, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror, his cologne clinging to the air like entitlement. "Marcus will notice if you don't show." I stared at my reflection, patting concealer beneath eyes that hadn't seen a full night's sleep in months. The dress I wore, a pale blue thing I once loved, clung to me like a memory I didn't recognize anymore. The wedding was an ode to excess. Towering white lilies, gold-edged wine glasses, a string quartet that played Beyoncé as if Mozart had composed her. Everything screamed curated perfection. Tiller beamed, shaking hands, kissing cheeks. He came alive in crowds. Me. I sat at the edge of our table, nursing a glass of flat champagne and watching waiters circle like polite sharks. "She's Gemma," Tiller said to the table, slipping his arm behind my chair, but not quite touching me. "My baby incubator on legs." There was laughter, nervous, shallow. I blinked. "You're what?" someone asked, half laughing. Tiller smirked. "It's a joke." Was it? I looked at him. The man I once whispered dreams to now use my body as a punchline. I wanted to leave, but Lily was with my mother for the night, and I had nowhere else to go but back to the silence. Then came the microphone. The MC, smiling like a game show host, announced, "Now, a few words from the bride's new sister-in-law, Gemma Aldridge." I froze. Tiller leaned close. "Keep it short, and don't get weird." My heels clicked against marble as I walked to the front. The lights were hot. My fingers trembled around the mic. I wasn't expecting this," I began, laughter fluttering from the guests. "But weddings are about love, about being seen, heard, known." A hush fell over the tables. "I hope Clarissa and Marcus continue to truly see each other, because sometimes love doesn't end loudly. It fades. Quietly, it disappears when one person forgets to look up, to listen, to ask, 'Are you still you?'" I paused. The air felt thick. And sometimes I smiled. "You stop being a person. You become a role. A function. Something people joke about while you're still bleeding from the life you brought into the world." A clink of a glass somewhere. Tiller's face stiffened. "So here's to not forgetting. To staying awake in love. Even when it's inconvenient." I handed the microphone back and walked off. At the bar, Tiller stormed toward me. "What the hell was that?" I said what I felt, I replied, my voice lower than his. "In public?" I met his glare. That's the only place I seem to exist anymore. He stared at me like I was something unrecognizable. Then, without a word, he turned away, adjusting his tie as he melted into the crowd. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't follow. The silence at home roared louder than any applause could have at the wedding. Tiller walked through the front door, as if the evening had gone perfectly. His tie loosened, his cologne still strong, his expression blank. I trailed behind, clutching my heels in one hand, the other gripping the doorknob like it might anchor me to reality. The baby monitor on the counter blinked steadily, a quiet rhythm against the soundless walls. Tiller poured himself a drink without looking at me. "You embarrassed me," he said at last, voice flat as the bourbon in his glass. "I told the truth," I replied, voice steady, though my knees quivered beneath my long dress. He chuckled bitterly. "You're not some martyr, Gemma. You're just dramatic." That word, dramatic, the same one he used when I wept alone in the nursery after weeks of sleepless nights, when I begged him to talk to me, when I asked if he even saw me anymore. "You called me a baby incubator on legs, Tiller," I whispered. "In front of your family." He didn't flinch, just sipped his drink. "You know I was joking." I stood in the center of the kitchen where once he danced with me barefoot under the flicker of fridge light. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone I'd seen in a dream and couldn't quite recall. Tiller's phone buzzed. He checked it and smirked. "I'm heading out early tomorrow. Don't forget to pack Leo's snacks for daycare." That was it. No apology, no confrontation. Just silence dressed in dismissal. I washed a dish just to keep my hands from shaking. The water ran hot, almost scalding. I let it burn. Across the room, my reflection in the darkened window looked like a ghost. That night, as he snored in her bed without even touching my side, I sat in the kitchen and opened my laptop. I stared at the blank page of a freelance writing site, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a spark. Small, but real. And sparks, when fed right, become fire. It started with the word sunrise. A harmless password I whispered to myself before submitting my first freelance article. I told Tiller I was writing a mom blog to pass time. He barely nodded. He didn't ask what it paid, or why I smiled when a client sent praise. Each night, after Leo slept and Tiller vanished into his phone, I opened my laptop and fed my secret life. 3 weeks in, I landed a steady client, editing speeches for corporate events. One piece even went viral. My name was credited, a breadcrumb I hadn't meant to drop. One afternoon, while Leo napped, I got a message. Karen Carter. Gemma Langley? As in Litsock 2012, Gemma. Just saw your name on a client's newsletter. Are you back to writing? My heart somersaulted. Karen, my college roommate, the one who once pulled me out of a breakup with tequila and poetry slams. The last person who knew me before I became just a mother and wife. I hesitated, then typed, yes, but now I'm Gemma Aldridge. Quietly, want to meet? We met at a cafe 2 days later. I wore lipstick for the first time in months. You look tired, Karen said kindly, her smile soft. I am, I replied, but also awake, for the first time. We talked for hours. I told her about Tiller, about the wedding, about the speech. Damn, she muttered, sipping her chai. You lit the match. Now what? I'm building kindling, I said, half smiling. Quietly, carefully, Karen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. When you're ready to run, she said, call me. Say the word midnight. That's our code. That night, as I rocked Leo to sleep, I whispered the code to myself. Not yet. But soon. The storm came on a Tuesday, violent and patient. Rain slapped the windows while thunder cracked like bone. Tiller was pacing, ranting about a client deal gone wrong. I stirred pasta in silence, each swirl a small rebellion. Did you send Leo's tuition form? He barked suddenly. I did, I replied without looking up. Last week. He didn't say thank you. Just grunted and turned away, muttering something about incompetence. I gripped the spoon harder. Later that night, lightning cast brief ghosts across our bedroom walls. I opened my laptop, careful not to wake him. In my inbox, an offer gleamed, part-time remote editor, weekly pay. Enough to cover rent on a small apartment. I pressed accept. The next morning, Karen called, her voice crackled with urgency. You okay? I dreamed about you. I hesitated, then answered softly, it smells like freedom here. A pause. Then her voice lowered. Midnight? I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. Not yet, I whispered, but close. From behind me, Tiller grunted in his sleep, restless, unaware that the walls around him had started to dissolve. The morning light broke through the curtains like a quiet revolution. I stood in the hallway, suitcase zipped, hand hovering over the light switch to Leo's room. He was at Mom's for the weekend, my carefully arranged escape window. Tiller sat in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, scrolling his phone. He barely glanced up. You're dressed early. Going somewhere? He asked, voice clipped, disinterested. I met his gaze. Yes, somewhere where I don't have to earn my right to breathe. He scoffed. Oh, for God's sake, Gemma, is this about that speech again? No, I said calmly. This is about the decade you muted me. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping. You're really doing this? I nodded. I already did. As I turned to leave, he shouted, you'll come back. You always do. I paused at the door, hand on the knob. Not this time, Tiller. This time, the light's on, and I'm not switching it off for you again. The wind outside carried the scent of a new season. I walked into it, suitcase rolling behind me like a thunderous goodbye. 6 months later, I was no longer a ghost in my own life. My tiny rented apartment smelled of fresh basil and toasted bread. I worked full-time with clients who spoke to me with respect, not orders. Leo adjusted quickly. Kids sense peace. His laughter returned. So did mine. Karen introduced me to Samuel one rainy Tuesday, a children's book illustrator with charcoal smudged fingers and a voice that felt like a lullaby. He didn't ask what happened to me. Instead, he asked what books I loved as a child. I told him, and he listened like each word mattered. One night, after Leo had gone to bed and we sat on my little balcony sipping cheap wine, Samuel touched my hand and said, "You don't flinch anymore when someone says your name. That's how I know you're healing." I smiled, really smiled, because I stopped being someone's silence. We married quietly the following spring, under a canopy of olive trees. No speeches, no spectacle, just truth, kindness, and 3 seats, one for me, one for Samuel, and one for Leo, who beamed the entire ceremony. Tiller never showed up again. No letters, no drama. Just the sound of a door that once slammed finally staying closed. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with peace.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.